Hey everybody! In today's video, I am going to show you a way to use very unexpected and even unrealistic color in your watercolor to add a lot of visual interest and maybe that one thing that you feel like you're kind of missing in your painting. I have this adorable, adorable fox image that I'm going to be working with today. And my apologies, my video file skipped around a little bit. I'm not sure why. And I have a little piece of a very well-loved craft mat, as you can see, that I'll be working on. And I'm using a water brush, and I'll just be adding some clean water to the tail. I like to give myself a base of water on my watercolor paper, because that helps the ink or the paint or whatever you're working with just flow across the paper and do self-blending. Watercolor does a lot of the work for you if you let it, and that's what I'm doing here. So I have a little bit of distress ink that I'll be painting this little guy with. And the reason I'm using a water brush is I don't use my natural or synthetic brushes with ink. I only use them with actual watercolor pigment. That's just a personal preference. I'm not telling you to do that. It's just that you're not used to seeing me paint with a water brush, and that is why. So after I add the initial layer of color, I'm just going to touch the darker color in the areas where there would naturally be shadow. And you can see what I mean by the capillary action of the water and the ink working together. It just self-blends. I don't really have to blend. Now I'm taking Peacock Feathers Distress Ink and I'm adding just a pop of that little unexpected color. It's very visually pleasing to see a sort of off complementary color combo, that warm orange with that nice turquoise. Of course, you know, this is a color scheme I love because I love New Mexico. And I usually do use the two of these colors together. But especially in an area where you're not expecting a complementary color, that's when it gives your painting the most impact. So to see that blue on a little fox that most people, when they sit down to paint a fox, they're like, okay, I got to paint the fox red. Well, I say add a little blue in there. It will make your fox the most interesting fox in the world. You'll see me removing water from the water brush with my hands. I do this a lot because the best way to ruin a watercolor painting is with water, believe it or not. Too much water will push the pigments away from each other. It'll give you dead spots. It'll give you hard edges. So I dry my paintbrush or my water brush quite a bit while I'm painting to make sure that any wet painting that I'm working on stays the way I want it to look. As I go through the different sections of the fox, I will do the exact same process. So I'm adding just a dark brown to him to give him shadow, and see how it pushes out on its own, and I don't have to do any blending. This is one big difference between watercolor and alcohol for coloring, is you can let the water do the blending for you if you control it. Look at his feet and his little bean toes. Those are so cute. I can practically just feel this little guy's fur. He's so cute. This image is nice because it's big enough to paint. I don't have to get my teeny tiniest paintbrush and get into all the nooks and crannies because he's just the right size for a card front. And since I am a person who has kind of a large head, I appreciate this guy's little 5 head. He's got quite a large head. So I'll just paint his feet. I'll do the exact same thing. Adding little bits of shadow. Now, if I do that when it's too wet, it will sort of creep into the front of his foot. You can kind of see that happening. That's okay because the edges of his foot would be a place that are naturally darker anyway. But you can stop that from happening by just letting it dry a little bit more. Now, after I drop in the teal, and I've done this every time, I dry the bristles and then sort of feather out the edge of the teal. With the brown and the red, since they're so much more similar to each other, I don't really have to do that. But with the teal being such an unexpected color in that mix, I do like to soften those little sort of tentacles that come out when you drop a wet color onto a wet image. At the end, I will go back and I will finish his toes, but when I paint an image like this that's rather large, I have to skip across a dry area to paint the next section. Otherwise, I'm just going to pull all of that ink into the section that I'm working on, and I'll lose what I've done there. So I always go across a dry barrier and work on the next section, and then let another section dry, etc. Now his head, like I said, it's a 5 head. It's very large. And so I need to work a little bit more quickly and or do glazing. So with glazing, what I would do is I would quickly get the bulk of the color down on his head, which is what you see me doing here, starting at the edges. And then as I run out of ink on my water brush, moving towards the center and filling that in, because that area, it's 3-dimensional, so it would naturally be lighter. And that way it's not completely dry when I get to that section. And then I can go back around the edges and add more intense color without leaving a hard line. But I still want to leave that section in the middle fairly light, so you can imagine that that part is closer to your eye. If this little fox were sitting in front of you, if you were that lucky a person that you had a little fox just sitting there. If, speaking of foxes, you want a great Instagram account to follow, I highly recommend Juniper Fox. Juniper is adorable and has a relationship with humans. You'll often see pictures of him lounging around on a couch or a bed. I believe he was a rescue and is not suited to living in the wild anymore. So some nice person took him in, and now he has his own Instagram account, which I look forward to seeing every day. So I'll add some teal on his face here, and especially in the shadows. I think it makes it really interesting to add that little unexpected color. Now, I flip my paper a lot when I'm working, just because I think I tend to move the brush in the same way. I've never really thought about it and watched my videos, but I think I'm just more comfortable painting in one direction than painting in the other direction. So I flip my image around quite a bit. On this image too, though, it's important for me not to stick my hand in the ink that's wet at the bottom of the image while I'm painting the top of the image, because then I might just drag that ink across the open area of his tail or his belly, and then I would be very sad. Of course, I wouldn't be that sad if I had to paint another one, because this is a lot of fun to paint. Unity has such cute, cute images, and this one just grabbed me. So I'll add a little bit of shadow. You do want his ears to be darker than his 5 head, because they are farther away from you and would naturally be shaded by his head. So it's okay if they don't exactly match the color that you have on his head, because they shouldn't. Just visually, they're in a different place. Now, I wanted his bean toes to be darker than his fur, so I'm using the straight dark brown. But as I paint his toes, I'm also leaving a little white space in each toe. so that it looks like it has a reflection, because you know they do, they look like beans. So I'll add that in there. I think that looks better than black. I had originally contemplated just adding black for his toes because both of my cats have little black toes. But I just felt on this overall warm image that I didn't stamp in black to begin with, and that he just has all these nice warm browns. I thought brown seemed more natural. Next time that I'm with a little fox that likes to sit up like a person, I will absolutely inspect his toes, and I will get back with you on whether or not this was an accurate portrayal of fox toes. I'm going to do the same thing on his nose, just to add a little bit of darkness. I think that makes his little nose so cute, but it would be hard to be cuter than this little fox. I hope you've enjoyed that. Try some unexpected color to really make your watercolor projects pop. Thanks so much for watching.